Good evening. Welcome to the Smart Questions broadcast, or should I say Smart Questions Club, hosted by Utah Politico Hub. Tonight we have members of our editorial board, Curt Bentley, John English, and later on we may see Holly Richardson. Without a specific topic this week, we're just looking at the top headlines and talking about what's going on behind the story. Kick things off, let's turn to John. John, you wrote a story today about a poll that was recently released that puts Donald Trump ahead of Hillary Clinton in Utah. Now, it's no surprise that the Republican would come out on top of Hillary, but there's more to the story there.
Yeah, Donald Trump. It's a Utah voter poll that BYU put out, and it showed that Trump has a negative 51 net favorability, and he's by far the least popular Republican in the field, and he's also the least popular politician running for president at all. Hillary even has better net favorability than he does, but still, when it came down to it, voters said that they would choose him 54 to 46 if the election were between Trump and Clinton. Now, when Romney ran in 2012, he had 72% of the vote, so that's still a significant drop in support, but it still just shows just how red our state is, where nobody likes Trump, but they would still pick him if they had to when it comes down between him and Hillary.
So, John, I've got two questions to that. One, does that put Utah into swing state territory? Is it possible that Hillary or any Democratic candidate could make a case to swing 4 or 5% of the state over to her side? I mean, we are still 14 months away, but does that put us into swing state territory if Trump were to maintain the course?
Well, the way they do their electoral maps often on cable news is if you're less than 10%, then they'll start to shade your state and try to make you look like you're only leaning or it's soft. And Utah hasn't been less than 10% in an election in a long time. I think you have to go back to probably the 70s to find it where it was that close. So the fact that Utah might actually go there, first Trump would have to win the nomination, and I still hold true that I don't think he will. But his popularity is so big right now that you have to take him seriously. And, you know, a minus 51 is a lot to overcome with your unfavorability, and yet it just shows that even the worst candidate in the field would still win against Hillary, but it would be much closer than it's been in decades.
Now, let me ask you this. Kurt, jump in if you want. 72% was Romney's number when he ran. And I recently saw something from one of his former campaigners that said Romney's still thinking about getting in if Donald Trump stays on top, just because he sees himself as somebody who can step up to Romney, or step up to Trump. Is that reality, or is that just clickbait headlines?
Clickbait headlines. I understand why he might be tempted, but I really don't think he's going to jump in. I think he thought that Jeb would be doing better at this point, and I thought it was the fact that Jeb was able to nab so many donors that was the main factor in Romney deciding that he was going to sit this one out. But when you watch someone like Trump, leading, he's got to be tempted to say, well, if none of these guys can knock out Trump, maybe I have to ride in on my white horse and save the day. But, I think he'll stay out, and I think Trump's going to be here for a long time. I don't think Trump's going to fall until we get to January when people are going to actually start voting. He could still win Iowa, but I think once people are starting to be serious, then I think Trump's popularity will finally start to go away.
Ooh,
and there's a difference between popularity and favorability.
This is true. They did have a good-sized rally the other day. It seems like he had 30,000 show up in Alabama.
I saw it was 20,000, but yeah, it was a ton of people. He has a lot of people curious. A lot of people want to hear what he has to say. And the funny thing about Trump is it doesn't matter what he says. Everything he says just kind of gets forgiven and swept away by a lot of voters. And you could take anything that he said in the past 3 months and have any other candidate say it, and their poll numbers would take a dive, and they'd have to be on an apology tour. And Trump just blows it off, just doesn't care, doesn't matter.
Curt, what do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I'm just watching to see when he goes down. That's what I'm doing. John, maybe you know. I mean, have we seen any movement in polls below Trump? Are there any people kind of making a move for the second and third spots, or separating themselves from the pack?
That you are finding, you're finding your ones at the bottom who are staying there. Jindal was actually doing better until a few weeks before that debate, and when he did not stand out in the kids' table debate, he's just lost all support everywhere. So Jim Gilmore, George Pataki, Bobby Jindal, those guys aren't getting anything. Lindsey Graham, he's not getting anything. Rick Santorum, sure, he won 11 states in 2012. He's getting 4% in his home state. He's not going anywhere. But the other outsider candidates, Ben Carson and Carly Fiorina, they are seeing stronger numbers. If you set aside Trump and just look at the other 16, the ones who are in positions of strength right now are Carson and Fiorina on the way up. And the ones on the way down, you got about 8 or 9 on the way down. Scott Walker's really gone down in the past month.
You know, it surprised me how well guys like Ben Carson have done, and even Carly Fiorina. I think they both have likable characteristics, but they seem to really resonate with voters who are just outside of the active participant in the political process sphere. The people who vote but also watch the news from time to time, right?
Yeah.
They seem to resonate to Ben Carson as someone who speaks his mind but doesn't have the nutty appeal that Trump does, right? And Carly just has a really good voice. She's very good at communicating.
Yeah, Carly's strength is her communication skills. Carson is his likability factor, and Trump is a celebrity. But you put all three of those guys together, they're getting like 40% of the votes, the three outsiders. So there is a big faction of the Republican electorate that is trying to send a message to the establishment, I think. They're trying to say, you know, we keep re-electing Jim Boehner and Mitch McConnell and giving chances to guys who lose but keep coming back. I look at McCain as a guy who lost the first time he tried and then won the second time. Romney lost the first time and then tried the second time. And this time around, guys who've tried before aren't getting anything. Rick Perry, Rick Santorum, Mike Huckabee, they're not getting any traction. I think the Republicans really want someone new. They want someone who can win. And Trump right now is getting the most publicity. I think when it comes to January, February, and they'll start to look closer at these head-to-head polls, that's where I'm pointing to Trump saying you don't want this guy to be your nominee, because when they say you go from state to state, it's like, okay, if you want Rubio and Clinton, who would you vote for? Trump and Clinton, who would you vote for? Walker and Clinton, who would you vote for? Trump usually comes out the worst when they poll in those. So Trump might be doing a good job in the national polls. He's even winning all the state primaries right now, most of them. But when it comes to head-to-head, he's showing he's still the weakest candidate, and I think that's more attention's gonna get paid to that as we come closer to Iowa.
It all depends on who you're up against. Go ahead, Curt.
I was going to say, do any of these other outsiders have a shot? What about Fiorina? I don't know much about her except that she apparently didn't have a great tenure at HP, right?
She seems to be running more for vice president in a lot of respects, doesn't she? I mean, she's doing a decent job of not talking about other Republican candidates. She just attacks Hillary. She attacks the Democratic Party. She attacks Democratic policies.
I think that's the key to her popularity right now.
Right.
Yeah, I think she's probably campaigning for a cabinet position. I think if she gets too popular, the Democrats are ready to just do to her what they did to Romney and Bain, just make HP just look like this evil, awful, gaping maw of a company that destroys anything in its wake. And she doesn't have that strong a narrative when you have someone like Trump come in. Trump can come in and say, hey, I never got fired from my company. It's a multi-billion-dollar company. Carly Fiorina, her record at HP isn't actually that great, and she was eventually fired. So she's great now, and I think she's going to get more support now because she's going to be great in primary debates. But I don't think she's going to actually win the nomination. I don't think she's actually going to come close to winning the nomination. I would be surprised if she took a single state.
Well, I'm not sure that she's going for that either. It seems like her plan is to get attention, but to be on the ticket, not the ticket.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Planned Parenthood held a rally at the Capitol this week. Had a good showing. Had some clever posters. But so did Governor Herbert and Representative Mia Love last week, rallying against Planned Parenthood. Governor Herbert said he wanted to cut off all funding from the federal government through state agencies to Planned Parenthood. What's going on here? Is this pandering? Is there some legitimate concern about Planned Parenthood's role in these videos and whether they're selling these aborted these baby parts for medical uses? What do you think, Curt?
Well, I think there's legitimate concern. What I seem to be hearing is, of course, from the right side, you tend every time a new one of these videos is released, and I don't know if they're done yet. What, 7 come out now, or maybe not quite that many?
Yeah, and there'll be more because they said there's going to be 10 or 12.
Yeah. And it's just outrage from the right, and then of course from the left, it's just this is just a cleverly edited campaign of misinformation. But that spiel gets harder and harder to make from the left side every time one of these videos comes out, because you start to triangulate them after a while, and I've stopped watching them just because they're too disturbing for me. I don't want to see them anymore. But I think it's clear that there are some really disturbing things going on. And so then the question you have to ask is, what does this mean, for all of what Planned Parenthood does? And is it the only option that's out there? And I still don't quite understand what Governor Herbert is proposing to do. Is it just a blanket cut of all funds, or
No, he can't cut off funds. There's about $2 million that flow to Planned Parenthood in Utah, and about $1.9 million of it goes directly to them. So that leaves about $100,000, give or take, that goes through state agencies. But that money is earmarked for sexually transmitted disease education,
right,
mothering, education, I guess, rape prevention, things like that, things that aren't directly tied to abortion or even for abortion services at all. So I think a lot of the complaints coming back from Planned Parenthood supporters is that the governor is not actually making a difference, that Planned Parenthood doesn't actually get any money through the state for abortion, and that the governor is, in some respects, shaming women who use Planned Parenthood services for other things and not really having any effect other than to pander for Republican delegates. Myself, I don't know that I agree on that take, but that I think is the argument that's being made, is that this is ineffectual.
Yeah, and that does make some sense. I mean, if funds are earmarked, it really becomes a question of two things. Is it just political, or is it also a question of leverage? It sounds like it's limited since that it's National Dog Day, so. Right? That's what I'm seeing on my.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking to that political question, I see that argument. At the same time, I think when you have an organization that does a lot of good things, but they still do one bad thing, then the funds are poisoned from the start. You have money that is going to help maintain that organization while they do this thing over here that is reprehensible. I think that it would be in Planned Parenthood's best interest to spin that off and do that separately. And they will say, well, we're required by federal law to account for those things, for abortion services, separately. But at the same time, it's still the same name at the top of the masthead. It's still the same organization that is over here helping women and killing babies and selling their body parts. And I think that's notable. And if we're going to cut off funding we're going to respond to that. I don't think it's a bad thing to send the message that this organization as a whole needs to totally separate those behaviors from the things that we're okay with, which I think is a reasonable thing that the governor's asking. John, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, I think Governor Herbert's doing what a lot of his other Republican governors have done, and he's pretty much showing solidarity. And I think that, I haven't watched all the videos. I did watch the one where they described the baby with the beating heart and how they still told her to cut through the face to get the brain out. And, the way they're doing, the guys behind the videos, they're doing this in a smart way. It is a political way they're doing it, but, that's the way gotcha media is. And it's Planned Parenthood has tried to respond to each one, and they've had to change their tack as new videos come out, and it gets worse. And they're putting the unedited videos out as well, so people can just watch the whole 3 hours and see that these are in context or not, depending how people's perceptions are. But there is something going on at Planned Parenthood that is making people take a step back. And abortion is going to be a topic every election. And there are a lot of people who are against abortion or against many forms of abortion, but they don't necessarily want it to be illegal because they still, believe in free agency and people should have their choice. And there are some people who believe life begins at conception and it's murder. There are some people who want it just, let's go ahead and put a line somewhere and not cross it. Let's just say 20 weeks. And there are some states that have laws like that. But the abortion on demand and abortion as birth control, there are a lot of people that just don't want that. And so when you see what they're doing with these late-term abortions, where you having these fetuses, where they're getting into 28 weeks and they could be viable, and they're delivering them, and they're joking about body parts, that says something to the clinical dispassionate nature of what they're doing. And doctors have to be clinical and dispassionate when it comes to a lot of what they do. They have to be able to perform surgery, do all the procedures they do. But there's something really disconcerting about how they're handling this aspect.
Okay, we've got two more topics I want to hit. We're running short on time. The first one I want to hit is the Utah County ballot. Now, John, you're in Utah County, right?
Yeah.
What's going on? Why are there two ballots going out to voters this fall versus just one unified ballot?
That one doesn't make sense to me. I haven't seen two ballots. Have they even sent them yet? I don't think I've even gotten one yet.
I don't think they've sent them yet, but what I understand is that there's going to be a ballot for the county commissioner and then a separate ballot for the sales tax. Is that accurate?
I don't know, actually. I'm going to the website to see what they say.
Okay, while you're going to your website, let's talk about. Well, you tell me. You can pick, John. Ashley Madsen or the property tax increase by the 36 municipalities who are seeking it.
Yeah, Ashley Madsen.
Okay, you go. I'm just gonna sit back and eat my popcorn.
Okay. The hackers that broke into Ashley Madsen, what the thing they wanted to expose was that Ashley Madsen advertises that if you pay us $19, we will wipe out all your information so you'll never get caught. And they made their demands, and Ashley Madsen stayed up, and so they released all the information, and now all those millions of customers that paid that fee, who had their accounts closed and said their info would be deleted, they see it wasn't deleted. So, I hope Ashley Madsen gets sued into oblivion. They deserve to be. They lied to all their customers. To go to the moral aspect of it, I got copies of the files of the raw data, and I'd been going through them just to see if, I knew anybody, if any of my cousins or anything had their spouse in there. And, public officials, there's been a few in there who've come forward. There are others who may or may not get outed later. that whole aspect of it is really sad. I mean, it's private. It's their own personal issues. When it comes to public officials, you can be like, well, if they're deliberately paying money to cheat on their spouse, then how can I trust them in office? There's that argument.
Let me ask this, because I've been thinking about this. Republicans tend to, in my opinion, go after these kinds of things differently than Democrats do. And Republicans seem to say, well, that they're being dishonest. Whereas I hear Democrats say, well, did they break the law? Did they do something wrong, right? And I think the two examples, and again, these are not perfect examples, is one, we have what's happening in Utah County. There's a certain individual that has been pointed at as being a client of Ashley Madsen. Their name was on there. They've not denied it. On the other hand, we have, let's go back a ways, Bill Clinton, right? He had his own problems, but yet he is a hero, still seen as a hero of the Democratic Party for his role as the president and what he did in the 90s, whatnot. I don't see, if he had been a Republican president, I don't think that would have happened that way. I think we would have left in disgrace. Why do Democrats and Republicans see these things differently? Even if it's Justin Miller, for example, it took a long time before Democrats came around and said, well, we have a problem with this. And even then it was based on, is there an investigation happening? Are there charges going to be put forward? A different response. It seems like on one side they want to look at did they lie, and the other side is there a law being broken? Do you see a difference, Curt or John?
Well, those are all different cases. I mean,
of course. I'm being broad and
let me. I'll try it this way. When the Christian Coalition embraced the Republican Party in the 80s, and the Republican Party became the party of family values, now anytime any Republican does something, immoral, then he's a hypocrite. As if Democrats cheating on their wives aren't hypocrites. But they do get judged to less of a standard because Republicans said we're the ones who are going to be for family values. And so, yeah, if a Republican is committing adultery, it's worse than if a Democrat's committing adultery. As far as Justin Miller goes, I think my only guess is there's some hesitation with him just because the Democrats are in such a minority position that it's hard when the few guys they do have in power, one of them looks like he's starting to do things improper.
There's certainly that aspect to it in this case. There's no doubt about that. So you think the reason that Democrats and Republicans may appear to treat candidates differently is because of the Christian Coalition element in the Republican tent?
Yeah, and it's different national and state. But for state Republicans, because the Republicans have such a majority, they can be more choosy about their candidates, and that's why the primary is always a vicious fight in a lot of races, where people are trying to get the most pure candidate.
Now, what's your read on the local flavor for the individual who's been fingered in Utah County? What's going on there? Because I see, there's been no holdback from anyone to condemn him. I have not seen anyone say, well, maybe it's not that big a deal. What's going on there?
That's because a lot of people were already mad at him. When he ran for county commissioner, his race was not as competitive. There were 2 seats open. Seat B was an open seat. We had 7 people run for it. Seat A, Gary Anderson was running for re-election, and a lot of people just assumed that he would win. And Graves was one of the few ones who challenged him. And I, personally, I voted for Jeremy Reville in round 1, and then when round 2, and it was between Greg and Gary, I voted for Gary.
You're talking about at the county convention, correct?
At the convention. And Greg won with more than 60% of the vote, so he automatically had that seat. And the Democrats didn't put anyone against him, so he automatically had that seat. Right after convention, and his big thing was, I'm going to balance the budget, I'm going to cut your taxes. Right after convention, the news came out that he had filed for bankruptcy twice, and a lot of people are like, well, why are we electing this guy if he's so bad at his personal finances? Why are we going to trust him with the county finances? And so there was a lot of buyer's remorse from delegates. But since we didn't have a primary runoff, since he had over 60%, Democrats didn't have anyone to put against him. He just got into office, so it didn't matter. Then once he was in office, he went ahead and voted for BRT, which is this bus rapid transit proposal in Orem and Provo to try to get more mass transit in Utah County. There are a lot of delegates who were against that proposal. Bill Lee, who's another Utah County commissioner, is against it, but Graves decided that he was going to be for it. And so you have this, you have another big budget project that's going to be happening in Utah County. And so with this news of Ashley Madsen, I think a lot of people were ready to jump on him because a lot of people were already upset and already counting down the days till 2018 when they could vote him out.
Curt, any thoughts? Any final comments? I think we're reaching the end of our time here.
Yeah, no more comments from me. That's an interesting story. You know, I followed it a little bit, and you look at Graves' resume at this point, and it's just as bad as you could possibly imagine. It's funny political things, you know, how somebody like that gets into office. He really just skates through. But
John,
Yeah.
any final thoughts?
All signs point to Orrin Hatch running for re-election in 2018, breaking his promise again, and hopefully this time we'll have someone who can stand up to him.
And we'll leave it at that. Thanks again for watching the Utah Political Hub's Smart Question Club. We didn't have a specific topic this week, so we've just been talking about the headlines. If you'd ever like to be on the Smart Questions Club or would like to propose a topic, send us an email at utahpoliticalhub@gmail.com. And as always, you can find us at utahpoliticalhub.com, and we'd love to have you join the conversation. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.
all right, thanks.